Hello and welcome. I am your host, the Obsessed Movie Man, and Jack. I still have no title for this podcast, or maybe I do and I don't even remember. That's kind of irrelevant right now. I am not with Kyle. I am not with CTQ. I am not with the Riddler Nation. I had to settle for a high school friend. Well, Kyle's a high school friend. Anyway, that's beside the point. This is Brian. Brian, say hi to the folks out on
Hi,
YouTube.
how's it going?
Yep, and I brought Brian here because originally Kyle was going to be here, but he had responsibilities. The nerve. So he's not here. So the show must go on with just Brian and I. And the topic today was going to be the Spider-Man trilogy, the good one, the Sam Raimi one.
Yeah.
And I guess we're just jumping into it. I could ask Brian how he's doing, but we already had that conversation. Brian, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
He's
Yeah.
still doing good. That's good to hear. Brian, you said you recently rewatched at least Spider-Man 1 and 2. What persuaded you to do that?
So my fiance has, well, not never seen them, but the last time she saw them, she was like basically too young to remember, and so she never actually got to watch them and appreciate them. And they're just such a big and I guess influential part in my current love of like superhero movies and all things comic books. And so I really wanted to share them with her, and so we started just from the beginning, because yeah, in my opinion, well, it's at least one of the top two best Spider-Man trilogies that exists now. I don't know, the Tom Holland movies are really good so far. I don't know if somebody put a gun to my head and made me choose between the two. I don't honestly know if I'd be able to pick one over the other.
Now I remember when the Andrew Garfield, because I've known you for ever since high school, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember when the Andrew Garfield one came out, we're not going to go into that one, maybe another time, but you were really against that at the time.
Yeah, I was really upset, and high school me back in the day had a very, I don't know, I just had a very strong reaction to those films because I grew up watching the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, and I love all three of them. Even the third one, despite what everybody says about it. And I just had high hopes because we were getting a new Spider-Man trilogy. I wasn't super stoked about Andrew Garfield at first, but I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm gonna put my opinions to the side and give him a chance. And I feel like I gave him a chance, and then I gave him a second chance, and it just got worse with each time. And so I'm glad that they didn't continue down that path.
There were so many problems with that one. I still maintain to this day Amazing Spider-Man 2 is the worst Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Spider-Man 3 is number 2. Anyway, no.
I can't agree with
we'll
that.
see how that goes. But, so, I'm trying to think where to go from here. You and I are good, big Spider-Man fans, obviously. We've read the comics. We've seen the Raimi films. But I think where we have to go... Were you around for Blade or no? Because I did not see Blade in the theaters.
No, I didn't see Blade.
Blade and X-Men, people argue, started the superhero genre that we're in. I would argue Spider-Man jump-started it even further, if not was the one that started, because there's a thing about the X-Men films I don't like where Bryan Singer always talked about, I don't want comic books on the set, I don't want you researching the characters, I don't want them wearing the yellow spandex and all that stuff. So, but then you get Sam Raimi, who read the comics, had a giant poster painting of Spider-Man on his bedroom wall as a kid, apparently, and knows these characters inside and out. And I think that love and passion translates really well into the first. We'll talk about the first film first. His love of Spider-Man really translates into that film. Like, even the tone. The tone, I think, is very similar to Richard Donner's Superman movie, the Christopher Reeve one, where it's very over the top, very colorful, very comic booky, for lack of a better word. And I'm gonna say it's hard for me to actually pick between Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 because while Spider-Man 2 is a better movie, I think Spider-Man feels like a definitive. I don't know where I'm going with this now. I think it's between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2, which I like the best. But I'm going to stop rambling for a second and say, Brian, what did you think of the first Spider-Man film?
I loved it. I definitely agree. I think the Spider-Man 2 is a better film, but I think it's kind of like the same thing that happened with the Christopher Nolan Batman series. I think the first Batman Begins was a good movie, but it didn't garner a lot of attraction. I think that a lot of the hype kind of came with The Dark Knight, and then retroactively looking back on the trilogy, I think people kind of in hindsight have a lot more appreciation for that first movie nowadays. Although I will say with Spider-Man, I do think that first film made a huge impact in like you said, invigorating people's interests in like the superhero genre. As far as like Blade and the X-Men go, like yeah, they were first, but I think if I to draw more comparisons, kind of think of it like kind of like how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre technically came before Halloween, but Halloween is the movie that basically kicked off a whole new genre of slasher films.
I'm so glad you brought up the slashers, because I was thinking the exact point, but I was like, I'll leave that point away. And then I'm so glad you brought it up, because it's very similar, because it was like you said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and then Halloween, and I will even argue Friday the 13th also. Mm-hmm. Those two in particular really mm-hmm. started the slasher boom, where we could make the comparison that Spider-Man is what really started the superhero boom. Mm-hmm. We didn't get to where we were with Marvel Studios just yet, but in some ways I kind of miss the days of yore, if you will, where we had the Marvel Studio stuff is really good, or most of it is, and it's entertaining, but there's a part of me that misses when we grew up and we would see these superhero films and you don't have to look at previous other franchise films to get what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to watch, I don't know, X-Men 2 to understand what's going on in Spider-Man 3 or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think definitely that there is no MCU without the Raimi films. However, I agree with you. And one interesting thought that came to mind while I was watching, or rewatching, I should say, the first two films, is that it's interesting to me that, like, they don't change much, like in terms of like the costumes. Like there are clearly, they're films made for the love of comic book characters and for love of the character, and they're not trying to change the costume of the character every movie so that they could sell more toys and more merchandise, you know.
You and I totally understand this, because I hope you're okay with this, Brian also, like me, collects figures. Mm-hmm. And it's so frustrating when you realize that's the reason why they could end. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. I mean, and even in the third film, right? He still keeps the same costume, and then obviously the symbiote comes into play. But it's done in a way that, like, it makes sense, narratively speaking, in the whole thing. Whereas when Disney took over Marvel, you can tell that a lot of what they do is to sell more merchandise through their parks and through their store and stuff like that. And it's just a shame, because even with Star Wars nowadays, you know, like the whole, no offense, and I'm going to upset some people by saying this, but the whole introduction of Grogu was simply to sell toys, right? I mean, it's a cute character, everybody loves it, but we all know why he was created in the first place, you know.
I will say, in fairness, Star Wars has always been about the toy. Like,
that's true.
I'm making this movie I'm holding it right now. I'm making this movie American Graffiti, but I can't sell toys, so I'll make the Star Epic War thing. We'll sell the little hairy Chewbacca or whatever I'm going to call it. But I get your point.
Yeah.
Disney has really amped up the commercialization of these films and franchises. But I think... What is it? So, would you say, going back to Spider-Man, specifically the first one, would you say Tobey is your favorite Spider-Man?
He definitely was. I think Tom Holland. Oh man, see, again, if you have to make me pick between the two, it's a difficult decision, and I honestly don't think. I don't think I can. I don't think I can choose between the two.
They're all very different, and unique. Mm-hmm. People often say, well, Tobey's the best Peter Parker, Andrew's the best Spider-Man, and Tom Holland, you can pick wherever you want. He's kind of the best of both. Mm-hmm. And I tend to agree with that sentiment. However, I'm still very sentimental towards Tobey as Spider-Man, because he was the first one. Mm-hmm. I think he is a good Peter Parker, and even though he doesn't joke a lot, he still does occasionally make a joke or light of a situation. But
Yeah.
there's something about the underdog, the lovable dork, that we followed him through 3 films, and we grew to care about him even in 3. um, but I honestly think, as much as I love Spider-Man and the character, I don't think they got him quite right from the comics. And it's not really his movie at the end of the day. It's Willem Dafoe's movie.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, when you're acting on screen with William Dafoe, it's kind of hard to, one up that. Like, he's just an iconic actor. But I do agree with you. I do agree with you in the sense that if I had to critique his portrayal, I do think that he plays it a little too somber at times.
Yeah.
Whereas they could have played up the contrast between Peter Parker and Spider-Man a bit more. It's definitely there, and it's there more than I previously thought when this topic comes up for discussion, because like watching the first 2 films, like Spider-Man does crack jokes, right? But I think they're just a little understated sometimes because of Tobey's demeanor.
Yeah, which is weird because Tobey, if you've seen him in real life, he can be a bit. I'm not sure if you ever saw the video where the reporters are in front of his car.
Yeah.
So he's almost the exact opposite of Peter Parker, when under pressure at least.
Yeah.
But I agree, he's kind of soft-spoken as both Spider-Man and Peter Parker, and that throws it off a little bit.
Yeah.
But I know we could go with every character, and I think we could maybe, unless there's one you want to talk about specifically for Spider-Man 1, I think the 2 that we should really bring up, J.K. Simmons and Willem Dafoe.
Oh yeah.
Could you argue that it's almost unthinkable at this point to have someone else play J. Jonah Jameson in live action now?
Absolutely. I think he's kind of one of those people that has kind of claimed his stake on that role for all of eternity, and unfortunately once he passes, I don't think that there's a person alive today or tomorrow that will be able to do what he's done. Kind of like Hugh Jackman and Wolverine, and unfortunately, he's getting older and he's not gonna be able to play that role forever. But I can't see anybody replacing him. So,
it's gonna be very difficult because J.K. Simmons is kind of like the character from the comics, just literally put on.
Yeah,
It's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's like the character is in real life.
Yeah,
because he's so over the top, so bombastic. I get not to be confused with the bombastic Bagman from the whatever. That's a Spider-Man joke. I love J.K. Simmons in this role, and he just keeps getting better and better. And I will say, this is not to do with the Raimi films, but as soon as he showed up in Far From Home, I'm like, oh my god, they did it. They brought him back. And I like how, even in that one, I like how they updated him a bit. I mean, I miss that he didn't have the flat top. If you're gonna make him if you're gonna do a little changes to the character, I think just let J.K. Simmons have his bald head. I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
But I also love there's a little bit of humanity in J. Jonah Jameson too, like when he covers for Peter Parker when the Green Goblin's threatening him. Little moments like that show you that the character's not all that bad.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of, again, rewatching those movies, I realized like there's a lot of subtlety even in like the humor. Like if you're not really paying close attention, like you miss a lot of what he does with it, which is really a brilliant performance.
And the other actor that's worth mentioning is Willem Dafoe, who, from what I understand, I could be completely wrong on this, he was not in consideration to play the Green Goblin. He got the script either by accident or he did indeed.
Oh, really?
Or he heard about it and was basically bugging Sony and Sam Raimi to say, I want to play the Green Goblin.
Oh, wow.
And so he was working on another film at the time, and they said, okay, we're going to send you a script and you film the audition. And he got the part.
Oh, wow.
Like, I think the part was supposed to go to Nicolas Cage.
Oh.
Which he went on to do Ghostwriter, but we get all the jokes we make about Nicolas Cage, you could totally see him in this role too. And he also, I almost said Norman Osborn, Willem Dafoe wanted to do as many of the stunts as possible, and you could see him on some behind the scenes, like jumping out of that glass case or whatever, going, and I think he's so... And the villains in these movies are really the stars of the show, I think.
Yeah, they definitely are. Yeah, I mean, he's just everything William Dafoe touches just turns to gold because his performance is great. I will say I could see somebody else playing that role effectively moving forward, but in terms of what he did at that point in time, like yeah, it's just I don't think that there's anybody that could have filled that role for what he did when he did it.
For that specific film, that Norman Osborn makes sense. I would have also liked to have seen, as much as I love No Way Home, it would have been cool to have seen a new take on Norman Osborn. And we got that with Amazing Spider-Man 2, but then the character died one scene later. But I would love, especially because I want to see a different costume. Now, I understand No Way Home gave him a new costume, and I love the look, but I would like to see... I would have liked to have seen something different than what we got in the first Spider-Man film, because people always make the comparison, oh, it's a Power Ranger suit. I think it's just the mask for me. I don't mind the body armor and the explanation they gave for it, but it's just did you ever see the mask they were going to use? Like I
did, yes. The more realistic, like silicone based mask. Yeah.
I don't know if it would have translated well, but it was still interesting to see at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think a mask isn't even really necessary because the character is basically a Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
Right, and so. I think it would be appropriate for him to be able to conceal his identity by going through some sort of physical transformation when he turns into the Goblin.
Oh, so like Ultimate Green Goblin kind of.
Yeah, like I think that could have been cool because, I mean, you know, you're already going with the biological changes of the organic web shooters.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That caused such a fuss, apparently.
And so it's like if you're already going to go that route, then, you know, might as well just make... like his whole biology change when he turns into the Green Goblin, and you know he turns into this green goblin goblin-like creature.
But Brian, they did that. Remember in Amazing Spider-Man 2, Dane DeHaan.
Yeah, we don't talk about that.
I'm glad he didn't show up for No Way Home.
Yeah.
There's nothing really much I would add to the first. I mean, I love the Danny Elfman music. He's now created two iconic superhero themes: the Batman theme and the Spider-Man one. What else? There are some goofy moments in this movie that, like the pumpkin disintegrates people into skeletons. The iconic upside down kiss. People parody that now. Is there anything you want to add from the first one? I've kind of had all my say.
No, I think that's about wraps up the thoughts on that.
It wraps it up in a nice little web.
Yeah, I guess maybe one thing that I think is really cool and just kind of just shows a feature of the time, and maybe our attention spans were a bit longer back then. But the opening credits, I really like that they play the theme that Danny Elfman wrote in its entirety. You know, while the title cards are going and the director and the actors are being introduced and stuff, because it's a long opening and you don't actually see that in movies nowadays. I feel like people, they just want to get to the point, but it kind of that theme is such an immersive score, and it's, in my opinion, one of the best superhero scores ever composed. And the fact that in both the first and second films, I don't know if they do it in the third, because again, it's been a while since I've seen it, but in the beginning they play his score in its entirety, and I think that's just really cool to see, not just for Spider-Man and setting the mood, but I think it's really cool because I think it deepens people's appreciation for film music in general, whether it's, you know, subconscious or otherwise, but I think it definitely does kind of bring the score to more prominence in those films.
100% agree. I do miss the opening credits in films. It shows appreciation for all the people who worked on it. I mean, you have the after credits, but still, people generally turn off the movie or leave.
Yeah.
I also loved. I think my favorite version of the Spider-Man trilogy's opening credits and theme was segueing to Spider-Man 2, where they showed. I think Alex Ross, a famous comic book illustrator, did the illustrations for the opening credits in Spider-Man 2.
Oh, wow. That makes sense. I didn't know who, but now that you say it, I'm putting two and two together.
Yeah, Alex Ross is incredible artwork, and that looks like his style to me.
Yeah.
So I could be wrong on this, but I think it's him. and just I love how they do the music and they're recapping the first movie. That's just brilliant.
Yeah, visually, right? Because it's like you could do like what everybody does nowadays is like they just recap it with scenes from the first one, but they decided with stills and like artist stills that look like almost storyboard panels. You know, I think it's really cool that they did that.
It's extremely cool. Where was I going? And to answer your question before, Spider-Man 3, they did do it, but then they added the symbiote score. And they had like the symbiote infecting Spider-Man's suit and all that, so there was just a little tweak there. But Spider-Man 2 is what many people consider not just the best Spider-Man film, one of the best, if not the best, comic book film. And I have vivid memories of seeing that one in the theater. I remember my sister was very little at the time, and she had not really seen a movie in the theaters before, so she didn't know what the experience was about. And there's a scene where Spider-Man's fighting Doc Ock on the train, and I think a tentacle is about to grab him, and my sister screams out, "Watch out, Spider-Man!" And everyone broke out laughing in the theater. And of course, there was my favorite line in the movie. "Oh my God, Spider-Man stole that guy's pizzas."
Oh, I thought you were going to say pizza time.
No, it was pizza related, but
yeah.
Spider-Man, the Spider-Man trilogy, I want to bring this up. Like the Star Wars prequels, or Star Wars in general, Spider-Man trilogy has reached the point in pop culture where it's become memes now.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Yeah.
Pizza time. The power of the sun in the palm of my hands. It's become a meme.
Yeah.
Maybe not to the extent of the Star Wars prequels, but it's getting there. Give it time.
Yeah, and I think, to be fair, I think that is a hallmark of just how influential it's been, and how influential it still remains to this day. I think, comedy in that sense is a high form of flattery. So
sorry, I just thought I love that phrase.
Yeah.
But I love this movie so much. There's the part that always gets me laughing is the raindrops keep falling on my head montage.
Oh yeah.
Right when because they do the Doc Ock storyline, and they do the Spider-Man No More storyline, which they even recreate the cover of Spider-Man No More where he's dropped the suit in the trash can and all that. I know we're gonna get to Doc Ock, but I do need to bring up this scene that I also think is pretty cool. There was a deleted scene. Do you remember this scene where it's the montage where Spider-Man's gone? Everyone's like, "Where's Spider-Man? Where's Spider-Man?" And you see a suit, and someone's like whipping around, and you think, "Oh, it's Spider-Man." He's back, and it's just J. Jonah Jameson in the office going.
Yeah.
I'm torn on if they should have kept that or not. I'm not sure that's too goofy for J. Jonah Jameson, but I enjoyed seeing it.
Yeah, I think it needs to be in there. I think that's one of the just comedic relief moments that really plays in. And then also when Spider-Man is finally done for, and they realize he's not coming back, and J. Jonah Jameson finally has the moment where he's like, "It's all my fault," and he's taking responsibility for it. And he's like, "I drove Spider-Man away." At the end of the day, Spider-Man truly was. And then he takes the suit, a thief, a menace.
That is peak J. Jonah Jameson from the comics, and that's, I think, my favorite Jameson moment in this trilogy.
Yeah.
There's a deleted scene where he says the word "a thief," and he accidentally blows off his fake mustache. Because it's not a real mustache. He blows it off, and it's the funniest thing.
That is.
If you ever get the chance, watch the deleted scenes. You get some gems in there.
Okay. Yeah.
Kirsten Dunst, I know some people don't like Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson. It's not Mary Jane of the comics. I think she's okay. I do prefer Emma Stone and Zendaya's portrayal of the love interest a bit more, because I do accept the criticism that Kirsten Dunst's sole role in these movies is to be the damsel in distress. But I think she plays not the damsel in distress, but the human component to Peter Parker very well. And
yeah, I agree, and I think that's the one standout with these three movies as opposed to the other two Spider-Man franchises, is that this one really focuses on the human elements of Mary Jane, Peter Parker, everybody involved really, and the human struggles, right? The struggles with money, the struggles with identity, the struggles with relationships, the struggles with success,
revenge for Harry Osborn.
Yeah, revenge, friendship, things like that. And that I think is something that's been lost nowadays in terms of modern superhero movies, that everything is just so high stakes that everything is just larger than life, out of this world, that we've lost that like human relatability of it, because, and this is a thought that I had when I was rewatching these first two films. The first film, the stakes are not the world is ending or even the city's going to be destroyed. The stakes are that there's just this guy that wants to completely blow away his competition so that he can have power and influence with his corporation, and so Spider-Man defeats him. The second movie, the stakes are not that the whole country's going to be destroyed or the whole world is at stake. The stakes are that New York, basically just Manhattan, is going to be completely obliterated if Doc Ock is able to complete his, failed experiment and stuff. And so I think the stakes being a little bit more localized rather than global or universal, like Infinity War and stuff, I think it allows them to focus more on the people and their relationships rather than the, MacGuffins that they're looking for to try to save the universe.
Totally agree. I accepted it for a few films, like Avengers, Infinity War, but then when you have the world's gonna end kind of storylines over and over again, it's like where you go from there? You can't really go anywhere from there, really. And I do like, if you think about it, at least up until 3, they gradually increased the stakes, like just gradually, because again, you didn't say it was all of New York, it was just basically Manhattan. And the first one, it's basically a psychopath flying around as a giant green elf, wants to basically kill Spider-Man. That's basically the plot. And 2, it's like Doc Ock's like, I need to make my experiment, I don't care how many people die. And 3, it's just kind of going back to the first one a little bit. Let's team up to kill Spider-Man. And Samuel's like, okay. I have a daughter. I love I know we're still talking about Spider-Man 2, but how it should have ended. That was the first how it should have ended I saw for Spider-Man 3, where he's like, oh, I have a daughter. That makes it okay for me to break the law. I'm not a bad person. But let's get to the man himself. Alfred Molina is Dr. Octopus. Again, very different from the comics, but they get him for this interpretation of Doc Ock. This is I haven't played the PS4. I'm not a video game person. Correct me if I'm wrong. PS4, PS3.
Yeah.
I haven't played that game. People say that's a good Doc Ock too.
I wouldn't know.
I wouldn't. So you haven't played it either.
No.
So from the time being, Alfred Molina is my definitive Doc Ock. I love that they used practical puppets as often as they could. Sometimes you get CGI. And how Alfred Molina just kind of, or if you look at behind the scenes footage, he's just talking to them. Like they're trying to figure out what they could have the arms do. Like he could have the cigar. He just talks to them. I think they named all the Doc Ock arms so they could tell which one's which. And of course, there's that meme going around that people saw that came out recently where he's singing "If I Were a Rich Man" with the Doc Ock arms.
Oh my gosh!
Have you not seen this?
No, I haven't.
Because this is when he was auditioning at the time to be in Fiddler on the Roof, and he's just going, "If I were a rich," and the arms are moving around like this.
That's super funny.
Yeah, I don't know if they needed to give him the split personality or the AI in the arms. But it's still kind of iconic at this point that I can't see it without it. So
yeah, and I think it's a little ahead of its time, even that they're already introducing that concept of AI and the dangers of AI and stuff as early as that. Looking back on it,
so it's aged like fine wine.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else you could say about Spider-Man 2 that hasn't. Is there anything that comes to mind for you? I mean, you gotta talk about John Jameson, the best character in the whole movie.
Yeah, so, I mean, one thing, because this time around, I watched, like I mentioned, the extended cut, which I didn't know was a thing, and I had never seen it until recently, and I will say that with all these musical theater references, I do think that the extended cut, unfortunately, detracts from the film. I think it's one of those things, like in musical theater, they say if you can cut a song from the musical and it doesn't fundamentally change like the story, then it's not essential.
Right.
And so I think Spider-Man 2 is one of them. So if I had to say definitively, the way to watch the trilogy would just be the first two watching the theatrical cuts, and I know we haven't gotten to the third one yet, but I also recently learned that there's an editor's cut of the third one that a lot of people don't know about, and apparently, according to a lot of people, solves a lot of the gripes and issues and problems that people have with the film.
I've never heard of the editor's cut for 3. Well, I've never heard of the editor's cut for 2.
Yeah, well, it's an extended cut for 2, and then for 3, it's an editor's cut.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, we've reached this point, Brian.
Yes.
This is the part where we disagree a little bit, because I've softened my stance on Spider-Man 3 just a little bit, so don't get your hopes up.
Sure, and maybe after this discussion, you might go and watch the editor's cut, and maybe you might be sold on Spider-Man 3.
You know, maybe. And then maybe pigs will fly too. Spider-Man 3, I remember everyone was excited for. I bought the toys at almost all the toys for Spider-Man 3 at a KB toy store. Do you remember that store? Or no?
Yeah.
I was super excited, and I remember seeing I remember being in the theater for the movie, and I'm not gonna say I fell into the trap, but I was underwhelmed when I saw the third film.
Really?
Really, someone didn't like Spider-Man 3?
No. Well, how do you remember how old you were when you saw it?
Okay, so I saw when it first came out. This was, I don't remember, I'm bad at math. This was 2007, right?
2007, 7th grade.
7th grade, so I would have been
12.
Yeah,
11, 12.
I'll agree with you on that.
As an 11, 12-year-old, you watched that Spider-Man movie and you were disappointed?
Okay, here's why. At that time, I started to read comics.
Oh, okay.
And
fair enough.
I really liked Venom. So I'm one of those people.
I see, yes.
I really liked the Venom character from when he first appeared. And I was kind of hoping they would do more with him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have a problem with Topher Grace playing him, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, he's not as buff as Eddie Brock was, but that's neither here nor there. I just was disappointed in his lack of time. I didn't mind Emo Peter, and I still don't really. It's fun to make fun of.
Yeah.
But I thought, it was very much like the song, the Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head montage, but with a goofier premise.
Yeah, yeah.
But there were so many dumb things too. I mean, I think because I'm growing up and becoming more cynical. When I was more cynical at that age, I was like, kind of conveniently forgetting all the dumb stuff that was in the original 2 Spider-Mans. And I'm just like, oh, Mary Jane's singing a song, and then there's Harry Osborn eating a pie, and that's also become a meme. And then there's Stan Lee making his cameo talking directly to Peter Parker. I'm like, eh. But then I didn't watch it recently. I watched it a few years ago, and I was actually prepared. I on my YouTube channel, I was going to years and years ago make a whole angry video. Remember those people, those angry YouTubers? Mm-hmm. I was gonna make a video saying the tangled web of Spider-Man 3 and how horrible it is, and how it doesn't make sense. I was just gonna nitpick it to death, and I started watching. And I'm like, it's not worth it. This movie is not as bad as people say it is. It's not even bad technically. It's just by one legit criticism, there's too many sub things going on in this movie.
Sure. And I'm not like, I don't defend the movie saying that it's a perfect film and people don't have the right to criticize it. I definitely acknowledge all the criticisms, but at the same time, I think people need to be fair when looking at it, because like you said, you were 11, 12 years old, which most of us were if we were old enough to see it in theaters and remember it. And I cannot remember at that time in my life a single person who went to the theater, saw that movie, and had any gripes with it. It was only until I got older, high school, college, that people started looking back retroactively and then judging it based off of their modern conceptions of what a superhero film should be or should do, or things like that. And so, for me as a kid, like, again, Spider-Man was my first introduction into comic book movies and superheroes and things like that. I wasn't heavily into comic books at the time. I knew who Venom was because I watched the 90s cartoon, And as a kid, I was just happy to see like one of my favorite villains on the screen, you know. And so, yeah, the plot is convoluted, and obviously there's a bunch of reasons for that, and I don't think that it, you know, is obviously it's not solely Sam Raimi's fault. There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, which I don't think we need to get into a rehash. There's a lot of boring just politics of film. But you know, I think for the hand that they were dealt, they managed to do quite a bit with it. And again, going back to this idea that if you watch it as just a film about Spider-Man and the very human struggles that he endures, I think it's a lot more endearing film as opposed to watching it as a Spider-Man film in which there's that pressure and in some ways unrealistic pressure to be true to every single character in the comic books and portray them accurately on screen.
Yeah, you can't do that. If you want here's the only way you'll get an accurate comic book movie. I heard someone say this once years ago, and I thought it was the funniest thing. You literally put footage of a comic book on screen and you flip the pages one at a time. There is your accurate comic book movie.
Or you make Batman and Robin.
Which is accurate to the 66 one. I am planning on reviewing Batman Forever, and that's the one that's harder for me to watch than Batman Robin personally, because of what they did to my boy Two-Face.
Yeah, but again, that kind of to me just serves the point. It's like if you make it too comic booky, people will criticize it. If you make it too serious, people will criticize it. And so it's like, and then even with Marvel, it's like they did a good job of integrating both for a time, but then even people got tired of that. You know? They're like, oh, it's too comedic. It's like, well, what do you want? Yeah, exactly. What do you want? That's
the Star Wars fan base in a nutshell, bro.
Essentially, yeah.
But I think we should talk about the movies a little bit. I will say my favorite part of Spider-Man 3 is all the stuff that has to do with Sandman.
Oh, definitely.
That scene,
definitely.
People always bring up this scene, and I'm sorry, but it's true. When he's forming for the first time with the music and you don't hear any dialogue, that's like a Pixar short right there. And I also love that Thomas Hayden Church, because my introduction to Thomas Hayden Church was in George of the Jungle.
Yeah, me too. Same.
So it was good to see him in that. And he's probably has the most comic book accurate film costume, because it's the most simple thing you could possibly imagine. I was a little disappointed that Harry didn't wear the green gown. I mean, I know why they didn't want to put him in the suit because of the criticism, but I always thought, wouldn't it be an opportunity to make the suit like yellow and give him yellow or orange and give him red eyes and just call him the Hobgoblin? I mean, I know Harry's not the Hobgoblin in the comics, but that'd be cool. I actually do like the montage, guiltily, of emo Peter, whatever you want to call him, and when he's flirting with Betty Brant, J. Jonah Jameson says, "Miss Brant, that's not the position I put you in," or something like that. What else? I love the symbiote effects. That's cool. I really like Aunt May's speech about revenge can turn you into something ugly. And I think it ends fairly well. Given what was going on, because I love the idea of losing a member of the trio, Harry. Spoilers for a movie that came out in 2007. But the way it ends quiet between just Peter and Mary Jane, I think I wouldn't have a problem with it if that was the last one, definitively going to be the last one, I would have had a problem with the ending. But I know they were going to make Spider-Man 4, so they would have had a resolution to that. And I don't know, I'm talking too much. You have anything you want to add to Spider-Man 3? Cause
I mean, I think it's a great film. I really liked it because, and this may just be personal to me. I'm not saying that everybody has to like it, but one of the big reasons why I liked it is just because, like growing up, like seeing the kind of relationship struggles that Peter goes through, it kind of made it more human for me, and it made me empathize with him as a person a lot and stuff. And again, I like it for that fact. I like it because you can watch it as a person. You can relate to a lot of the struggles that he goes through, especially, just seeing him graduate high school and then, struggle with paying rent in his apartment.
I forgot about that one.
Yeah, but things as mundane as that, like, I think it just humanizes the character, humanizes the film a lot more. Like, is it convoluted? Absolutely, but to have a trio of villains that have been to some extent built up to this point, right? Venom was newly introduced. Sandman, even though he's newly introduced, he has tie-ins because he's the one that actually killed Uncle Ben. And then Harry has had this character arc development throughout 3 movies. So it's not like they just randomly cobbled together the Sinister Six or anything for one
like what they're doing now.
movie. Yeah, what they tried to do with the Amazing Spider-Man films, they were just gonna throw them all in together last second to try to come up with a Sinister Six movie. But there was some development there, right? And again, people can say that it was not enough development or there's not enough screen time for certain villains, and okay, sure, I agree, but I don't think that that's enough to say that it was a bad movie. And the things that people point to, like the emo Peter Parker and stuff, I just write it off as comedic relief. I think that if you're repulsed by that, you're supposed to be, because everybody is repulsed by this person that it's turning Peter into, because it's inauthentic, and when you're faced with inauthentic people who are posing or coming across as arrogant, right, it repulses you, and you have a visceral reaction to that. So if anything, I feel like that those creative decisions were effective in conveying the meaning of the film rather than detracting from it like most people swear it does.
Like, the way I interpreted that scene is like, that's the symbiote, because it's an alien, it doesn't know things on Earth, it's slowly learning, so I think it's trying to figure out, okay, Peter, he's like kind of like a wingman. The symbiote's like, this is what you have to do to be cool. You have to do this. You have to. I'm doing weird stuff right now, just with, like, you have to point. You have to dance. You have to wear all black. So it's the symbiote's like that friend you have was like, this is what you have to be cool, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what the symbiote does is it amplifies his aggression and all these other emotions within him, and so, of course, he's gonna come across as cartoonish to the average person or to over the top, because the symbiote is amplifying the way a normal person would act in those situations to the 10th degree. So there's that, and then the one thing I will say that I don't know. I think this in and of itself may merit the editor's cut being worth it. So they basically fixed the huge plot hole that everybody has with a third film, where the darn butler walks in and finally, after 3 movies, for some reason just now decides to impart the knowledge onto Harry that his father died by his own blade. They actually remove that whole scene in the editor's cut, and they make it so that Harry comes to that realization on his own. That not that he realizes that his dad died by his own hand, but he just chooses for himself to forgive Peter because it's the right thing to do, and because Peter's his friend, and he chooses to put aside his ill feelings of revenge. And I think it's a much more redeeming moment for the character that fixes a huge plot hole. Like, why did this butler not speak up sooner? So they just take that out entirely, which I think makes for a more compelling.
How dare you disrespect
film.
Bernard? I do remember. I remember seeing the deleted scene where he says, "This is no disrespect to the actor. I know he was an older gentleman.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that he called the glider Gilder or something like in the deleted scene. He died by his own. The blade that pierced his body came from his Gilder." And Sam was like, "It's glider." I'm not sure there's really much to say about Spider-Man 3. We know that there was more behind-the-scenes stuff for Spider-Man 4 production. Like, they wanted to add, what was it? They wanted to combine Black Cat and Vulture to be a Vulturess. They wanted to put Vulture in it, and it was just going to be a mess. And so the Sam said no, and they just said, okay, reboot time. We got the MCU started to form about a year later. So comic book movies were on the rise of changing and being more serious. For as serious as you can get with a comic book film, but I'm not sure we have time. It's not really a Sam Raimi No Way Home, if you want to include it as Tobey's farewell
Sure.
I'm not sure if you want to add your thoughts on it, because I know
you could look at it as Toby's reintroduction, because now there's whispers about giving him that final fourth movie.
I don't know if it's gonna happen.
I'm hopeful.
You're holding out hope?
I can hold out. Yeah, I will always hold out hope that I'll get to see him on screen as Spider-Man once more.
Finally fight what Bruce Campbell as Mysterio. It'll be revealed that every cameo he did in those movies was the same guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that, even without that, even without him eventually becoming Mysterio, that is one thing that I wanted to just highlight, the fact that Sam Raimi got his start with the Evil Dead movies. And he had Bruce Campbell, his star actor, in there as cameos. I think it's just a cool thing that if you're a film nerd and a film buff, you can just kind of look at and appreciate. Yeah.
He even did that Multiverse of Madness. He brought Bruce Campbell back for that one.
Really?
Yeah, he did. He's like a hot dog salesman. It's to the point where the very last scene, the post-credit scene, is Bruce Campbell again.
Oh, okay. I'm. It's been a while, so it's slipping my mind, but that's cool.
That was, but I think we all knew they were trying to keep this secret so bad. Like Andrew Garfield lied so many. The liar was just lying so often about, oh, I'm not in the movie. Oh, it's a deep fake. Oh, it's a Photoshop. Yeah. And but Toby was just kind of brushed it off. No one really asked him. They were all bugging Andrew, but it was so good to see Alfred Molina, Andrew well, if we're going with the Raimi films, it was so good to see Toby, Alfred Molina, and Dafoe again, just basically playing these characters.
Yeah.
I would say Molina's on par. Molina and Dafoe are on par, as they were just. It's like they never stopped playing those characters. And Toby, the only criticism I have with the No Way Home and Toby stuff is that he never got to really fight or have an interaction with Willem Dafoe again. I know there's a lot of stuff happening, but that would have been cool. But I do love the interaction he got with the redeemed Alfred Molina Doc Ock.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure if there's really much to add to No Way Home unless there's something. Were you excited, or were you like excited when you heard the rumors that?
Yeah, I don't think I even heard the rumors before seeing the movie. I think seeing the movie is when I found out, because I think that was one of the few films that I decided, I'm going to see it on opening night, and I think I avoided the internet for the months leading up so that I didn't have any spoilers. And so I think it was a genuine surprise when I went in there and watched it, which I'm glad it was. And that, again, I don't typically rewatch movies within a short time frame. Like, I'll watch movies if I haven't seen it in years or so, but that was a movie that, again, is just a culmination of everything, not just the MCU but the Sam Raimi films. And I will say it did, in my opinion, redeem the character of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in a lot of ways.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah, it definitely gave him some depth, and it gave him some validity, I guess you could say, in his existence. But it did not, for me, redeem his films. But as a character and as a Spider-Man, I definitely think that it at least validated him in that way.
It made me appreciate his Spider-Man a lot more. Not his movies, but the performance he put in. I never had a problem with Andrew Garfield playing Spider-Man, at least, but I thought his Peter Parker was a little bit more believable in this film than it was in his own films.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's crazy how the little screen time that he had in that movie, which is not even his movie, added more depth to the character than the entire two films that he had.
You really hate those films.
Yeah, they were terrible. They were awful, and I don't really acknowledge their existence on most days,
except for No Way Home.
Yeah, the only reason I acknowledge them is to just appreciate No Way Home.
That is fair, but yeah, that's kind of all we have to say about the Raimi films, plus a little bit about No Way Home. Brian, what do you think is in store for Spider? I know you're now into the Tom Holland stuff. Are you looking forward to what the future has in store for Spider-Man? We have the Tom Holland stuff. We have The Sonyverse. But we also have things like the Into the Spider-Verse stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm excited for Morbius too. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's Craven time now.
Yeah,
it's not
Craven
Morbid time
time
anymore. It's now Craven time.
Yeah, no, but in all seriousness, I am definitely excited for the future of Tom Holland. I think they really struck gold with him as an actor, and I think there's still a lot more that they can do with that character. I am holding out hope that we will see Toby back. I don't think we need Andrew back as Spider-Man. I think we're good with that, But I do think that it would be silly, and knowing how Hollywood is, I don't think that they're going to leave that much money on the table knowing how much money they can bring in with another Toby Spider-Man movie.
My thoughts are they'll bring Toby, Andrew, Hugh, and Ryan back for Secret Wars. Like they're gonna try and bring as many people back for that.
Possibly. Or alternatively, the next Into the Spider-Verse film, I think we could see them in that as well, because we got little homages to them in the previous one.
That's probably even more likely.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, true believers, first I want to say thank you, Brian, again, for joining me on this. And we will see you in the next podcast. And maybe I can convince Brian to rewatch Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, and we'll talk about those. But then again, like I said, maybe pigs will fly. Brian, thank you again.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Take care.